obviously today we're talking about the water elements and its function governing growth, reproduction, willpower, right? It's that deep strength that we have that we can tap into, that puts us through. In nature tends to be cooling, so it's important to keep that balance in the water elements so that the water doesn't get dried up. And the kidneys store and regulate energy. Obviously they clean our fluids and balance. So in terms of our work, the bladder meridian being the longest meridian in the body, running, from the eyes up over the head, down the back, the legs, hamstrings, calves, and feet. So it's very involved in all of our treatments. And of course, all of the back shoe points, which are influential points for all of the organs in the body, run along the bladder meridian. The first bladder line is reflecting the organs and the chi and the blood, the current state of health. And the second bladder line tends to reflect deeper issues, cellular memories. They call, there are ghost points on the second meridian. So it's kind of a deeper, more hidden energy that lies in the second bladder line. A lot of people overlook or miss these points or these lines, or don't even necessarily even learn or address them, but they can be hugely impactful, especially with chronic pain and problems. So the clinical importance obviously is we're pretty much always touching and working on the bladder meridian and the bladder points, whether we're being intentional about it or not. So being intentional about it gives us the opportunity to release trapped energy and essentially balance the entire body system. So it's the one meridian that you can treat on the body where you're actually basically addressing everything, because every reflex point for every organ and the entire nervous system is traveling through this space on the back. So we think about it mostly for back pain, musculoskeletal tension, and structural imbalances, but in reality it kind of has an impact on everything. And in terms of pressure tolerance, it varies a lot. A lot of people are kind of used to being treated with strength in these areas, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most effective approach. So most people can handle like a slow, sustained pressure, even moderately deep. And of course, if we use the principles that we've learned, we can take time and wait for the body to release through the various layers of tension to get into that very deepest level. So the nice thing about the bladder meridian is there really are very few contraindications when working on this region. A disc herniation would be one that is a local contraindication, right? We've all learned that, but generally speaking, it's quite a safe area to work. So the kidney meridian runs, of course, in the inner leg, torso, and chest, and deeply connected with our vitality, fertility, and longevity. The key points are supporting, strengthening our chi and essence, balancing fluids, grounding and calming fear, and generally treating the kidney meridian, we associate it with low back pain, and sometimes, headaches, teeth, jaw pain. They say the further down the kidney meridian you go, the closest to the top, so it's basically your reflection going this way. So, for example, kidney 3 is a point that is often used for asthma, coughing, shortness of breath, right? It's further down towards the foot, whereas kidney 9 can tend to be a point that is used more often for lower back pain, particularly chronic, deficient lower back pain. What else? Now, obviously, most of us already work directly on the bladder points on the back, but again, like the leg portion of the bladder meridian on the hamstrings are really effective for low back pain, right? Because the low back pain here means it's pulling and often anteriorly rotates the pelvis, right, which puts tension on the psoas, but it also puts a lot of tension into the hamstrings. So, we've talked a bit about that bladder 36 point, which some of us are feeling today after our heart resonance course on horses yesterday. So that's a great point, and we can work on it. And interesting that it has, it has that connection, but it's really, really great to release for lower back pain, and of course, what is this point right in the middle of the hamstring? 37, right? 37 in the middle of the hamstring. Really, really good point for releasing. Again, with pressure, I find even more so. There are points on the bladder meridian, like Kiko talks about the lock and key points that are on the bladder meridian, and it's like bladder 37, sorry, 57, bladder 62, and bladder 36, and that basically unlocks the pelvis. And so they're really good points that if you're using acupuncture, when you're using acupressure, often we look at different points because areas that we apply pressure aren't always as responsive with needles, and a lot of places we apply needles, we can't really apply pressure in the same way. So sometimes we're using different points. And when you feel them, you can feel when you develop that sensitivity whether the point actually needs some work or not. Excuse me. So generally speaking, we're gonna go into the treatment of the bladder and the kidney meridian. So again, when we're doing our bodywork sessions, usually we're using a half kneeling position for the bladder meridian. So we can start with our palming and assessment. And again, usually when I have people face down, even before I start, I'm using that do my mobilization as an assessment tool, but it's also the initial loosening up treatment tool, so that once the vertebrae are moving better, then the chi also in the bladder meridian is going to be able to move better because it's already getting stirred up and stimulated. So we start with that, and then apply palming, and then we can go into our thumb treatment, our thumb, side thumb, same side of the body, elbow, and I'm going to focus today on demonstrating you guys treating upper bladder line, treating the lower bladder line, and just the positions. And again, it varies from person to person and what's going on with them, how much time I'm actually going to spend on the back. And also, if the client is in like a more stressed out, vagal, or even traumatized state, I'm often going to focus more on creating like a rhythmic treatment that is connected with their breath, so that it becomes more soothing and relaxing, as opposed to a more point-focused treatment that is going to really hone in on, those points to treat. And that would be in the case of someone who is maybe less overstressed and just physically in their body too much. And sometimes, once you do that, then you realize that they really need that deeper stuff as well. But generally, particularly with women, right, we get a lot more emotional and a lot more kind of impacted, by life and our environments, or maybe we're not more impacted, but we're more aware. of being impacted by it, right? I think men just kind of take it in and hold it. So doing a more dispersing treatment, also because they have more blood, they have more muscles, so it's oftentimes that their muscles and tendons just need the work more than the nervous system. So I would say in general, I would say when I'm treating women that I would approach it with a more rhythmic treatment, treating sort of all of the points, whereas if I'm treating a male, it may be a more specific and specialized treatment where I'm treating areas or points with more intention. Does that make sense? Making sure I'm saying that properly. Okay. And again, same thing with men. I'm often going to be tending to do more dispersing, so a little bit faster and a little bit. You can go a little stronger if the person feels physically capable. But having said that, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but I don't know, it probably happened 30 or 40 times before like I clicked into it. But I would have a woman come in for a treatment, and she loves the treatment so much. Oh, my husband's got so much back pain, I'm going to send him to see you. And they send their husband in, and their husband goes home crying that I tortured them. Right? Am I using more pressure on them? Absolutely not. But they just, because they have so much more blood and chi, and they have a lot more lactic acid in their muscles because they're overusing it, so they actually feel the pain more than a woman would. But also, research has been done that women internally tend to feel more inside of their bodies, and men tend to feel more on the surface of their bodies, just by the way their nervous system, is designed. So I learned that a lot less pressure on males, that they feel it a lot more. And people say, "Oh, men are babies," and I sort of felt like the same way for a long time, and then I kind of realized this, and I got a little bit more sympathetic to the fact that maybe they actually feel more pain on the surface than women do. And so I just changed the way I treat to not having to go all the way to the bottom of the point, right? But dispersing what's on the surface. They still feel it, still hurts, right? They still get the improvement, and the chances of them coming back are higher because you haven't made them cry, hurt them a lot. But I do find that I can use way more pressure on women than I can on men. You guys found that?
Yes.
Yeah, in general, of course. I know, I'm sure. Yeah. Cool. All right. So I believe that I treated you first yesterday to have your blood up. And I'll leave